Welcome into the 89th episode of the Sabremetrix podcast. My name is Bill. Alongside me, as always, is Walt. Walt, how you doing today, man?
Doing pretty good. Looking forward to our first episode of the season where we have, almost actual Sabres games to talk about. Two preseason games against the Blue Jackets in the last few days.
Yeah, a couple wins for the Sabres, or I guess I should say Sabres slash Amerks, but it's good to see the boys back on the ice. I love a nice home and home, back to back, 2 straight nights of Sabres hockey. That was fun to watch. But before we get into those games, since it is episode 89, wanted to bring up this topic of the Sabres number 89, Alex Tuck. First topic of the day, Walt, on a scale of 1 to 10, how concerned are you that Alex Tuck has not signed at this point?
I'd say for me, I think based on everything we heard come out of both Alex Tuck and, people with insider information, I'd say like a 2 or a 3. I'm really not that concerned at this point. It sounds like he wants to be a Sabre. It sounds like they're somewhat close, and I hope it gets done before the regular season starts because like I said in previous episodes, I wouldn't want him resigning to be contingent on the Sabres coming out the gates hot. I'd love to just get that done right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I understand where you're coming from, but I'm more of like a 6 or a 7 simply because I believe there was reporting that came out basically saying he might be waiting for a shoe to drop. And my thing was just get it done before the season. And if people they're waiting on haven't signed by the start of the season, that means Tuck probably hasn't either. And that's what worries me. So the words of Kevin Adams and the words of Alex Tuck make it not worse than, I guess maybe a 6. But it's the fact that, okay, they could be waiting until the season begins. And then thereafter, what happens if the Sabres don't start strong? Then it's really up in the air. And pen hasn't hit paper yet. So that's my concern. I understand where you're coming from for sure, but if they're waiting on other players to sign to base their contract off of, they're they still have time. First game of the season is October 9th. So I also find it a little interesting that they have an entire week between their final preseason game and the home opener. I guess the season opener, which is
Classic
the home opener.
NHL.
Classic NHL. It doesn't make much sense at all, but
Yeah.
it's like it's the Premier League or something. But
Yeah.
that's where my like 6, maybe 7, but probably 6 comes from. So something to keep an eye on. Obviously, it's going to be something we talk about pretty much every episode until pen hits paper or something happens. And if it goes into the season, then sure the heat on that 1 to 10 scale will be scaled up a bit, at least on your end. I might still stay in like the 7 range, but yeah, I mean, do you have any idea of maybe what he could sign for? I know we didn't necessarily discuss this pre-show, but is there anything telling you it might be around 9.5, 10 million a year? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean the number I've, kind of been keeping in my head is just like that 9 million number. And I think if they could get him like without hitting the tens, I think that would be a perfect contract because salary cap, I mean, that's going up a ton the next few seasons.
Mhm.
So I think some people, may get sticker shock with some of these contracts, but then you look at it like with the percentage of a cap, uh, just down the stretch, like the first few years in the contract, and you're like, oh wait, that's really not that bad. You kind of have to recalibrate how you look at the annual cap hit with this rising cap. So I think if they could get him anything in the nines, I'd be completely down for that, even if it's 8 years. I think Sabres really aren't in a position to be like picky about term and money with guys. They just have to keep the good players they have if they want to stay here.
Okay, so this is not only a question for you, Walt, but a question for those listening, which appreciate you tuning in. Knowing that, would you take the Eichel deal for Tuck? 8 by 10?
I think it's my two options, like either taking that or having him walk, because I think I'd sign him 8 by 10 if the other option was him leaving, because
Okay.
it's like, where else are you spending that money? Like, sure, they have some fun prospects right now, but there's really not any guys that will probably cost a ton of cap. So
The one guy I'm interested in because, and we'll talk about him a little bit later, so I'm kind of spoiling it, but Michael Kesselring, if he has a really good season, he's an RFA next season, or Josh Doan. I believe they're both RFAs after this upcoming season. That could be something that they look at saying like, "Oh, we need to save money for this guy and this guy," and Zach Benson, of course, too. So I don't know. I wouldn't it's one of those things they could be holding out to make sure they do get a fair deal because we were talking about Jason Zucker getting a pay increase, and he ended up taking a slight pay decrease. Might have been with some term attached to it, but,
Yeah.
you know
Yeah, I think the thing with Kessling is though, like I look at someone like Dylan Sandberg this past off season, and he didn't even clear like 6 million cap hit. I mean, I know he only got 3 years, but I think
Yeah.
it'll take a lot for Kessling to kind of like have a contract that'll hurt a little bit. And I think the fact that Byram's still hanging around too, like you're looking at a guy that probably won't put up crazy offense numbers, will be more of a role guy. I mean, we did see Samuelson get a decent amount of money as a role guy, but at the end of the day, I just don't think there's not like a Eichel or Reinhardt in the Sabre system right now where you're like, or even a Dahlin where we're like, we have to save like 10 million per year for this guy. Because I mean, Powers signed, Dahlin signed, Tage is signed. Like those are really the only guys that matter. So I think you got to do everything you can to keep Tuck. So yeah, I'd be willing to go up to 10 million, 8 years on him.
Okay. All right. Well, that's also, like I said, a question for the listeners or viewers at this point. Now that we are on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe over there. Let us know. Shoot a comment or reply on social media because I'm curious to see what people are willing. Then I'm okay with this, but uncomfortable, and then like this is my top of the line kind of contract that I would give Alex Tuck. And I'm sure there's people, a short term contract, and this is what I'm comfortable with, and a long term contract, and this is what I'm comfortable with. Very curious to see those kinds of projections because they can be vastly different depending on who you are. All right. The Sabres did play 2 preseason games. And so they played 2 games. Walt, give me 2 players that you've been impressed with so far over those 2 games.
I'd say the first guy. I mean, I think this one's an easy one because he went against pretty much an AHL team last night. But I think Rasmus Dahlin. I mean, I've been saying it like the last 2 years probably, but he's like firmly cemented as a top defenseman now. And it's just like crazy how easy the game comes to him. Like, obviously not the best competition last night, but he was just toying around with guys out there, just dominated when he's on the ice. I think he's a special player. I think we're really lucky to have him in Buffalo. Number two, I mean, I'll go with the popular pick. I think Casa Helenius. I think he's someone in his 2 games so far in the preseason. I think he's really impressed. And, I said it when they drafted him. I think he's a guy who is going to leapfrog a lot of the Sabres, quote unquote, top prospects, despite being much younger than him. Like, he's a guy where you're like, oh, this guy in his draft year must be like a fall birthday, like one of the older guys in the draft class. Like, he's like a late spring birthday in that draft class. The guy plays the game like he's 28 years old already. Like, it's insane. Like, someone has to like check this guy's birth certificate or something because it's crazy, just like the maturity in his game for a player at his age. And I think it's similar to me to a guy like Benson, just where it's like if this guy sneaks out of the NHL roster, I don't really care too much about rushing him because I don't think you rush guys that are that smart. Like I think he can be an NHL player today, and I think this preseason so far has kind of shown us that he already has that NHL ability despite still being a teenager.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you you're not Walt right now. You are Sabres management, whether that's Kevin Adams or Lindy Ruff. Um, when it comes to Consta Helenius, and you're one of those 2 guys, I don't know who's really making that decision. Obviously, probably both in tandem, but what do you do with Consta Helenius? Because you, Walt, sounds like, yeah, give him if he earns this NHL spot, give it to him. But let's try to guess the realistic option. You're Kevin Adams or Lindy Ruff. What are you doing with Consta Helenius? You let him go down to Rochester? You letting him start in Buffalo and then go down to Rochester? You just letting him go to Rochester, play number 1 center minutes, and go from there? What would you do, assuming you are GM Kevin Adams or Lindy Ruff?
Yeah, well, I think it really depends. Like, is Tuck ready to go by game 1? Like, it sounds like he is. So if he is, and there's no other injuries in the forward group, I think it makes sense for Helenius to start in the AHL, unless he absolutely impresses and you can't send him down. He looks that good. So I think right now, yeah, if the forward group's healthy outside of Greenway, obviously, I think he gets sent down. But if there's one other injury to that forward group, at least in that top nine, like I'm just looking back to the start of training camp when Tuck was still hurt. They had Justin Danforth on the third line and Mason Geertsen, who's has 25 career NHL games, hasn't played the NHL in I think 3 or 4 seasons on their fourth line. So I mean, I'm just looking at that and I'm like, yeah, you can't let that happen. Like, how many years into a playoff drought are we? Like, you can't have third line Justin Danforth and AHL enforcer on your fourth line
Yeah.
at this point of the season. Like, you got to come out the gates hot this year. So I do think if there's one other injury outside of Greenway, uh, I think Hellenius has that spot. Like, I think Geertsen and Danforth, like those guys are fine to have in the lineup. I just think Geertsen though, like to open up the season with him in an NHL role, and he's not even your 13th forward. I think that would be a little too ambitious for his role. Like I could see him being called up in an enforcer role in a pinch, but I think if a top nine spot opens up with an injury in the top nine, I think you got to be looking at a guy like Constantinius to fill in that spot.
I would agree that if the only opening is a fourth line spot, no. No, we're not putting Hellenius in that situation. But let's also think like opening night, are you really going to need an enforcer? Maybe. Like if Rempe's playing for the Rangers, maybe. But if there is another injury or something, some guy takes a shot off the foot in one of the preseason games coming up or something like that, then yeah, very real possibility. Do you think if you had to choose between one of the two, and then I'll get to my two guys, would you choose Hellenius or Roseanne for a top nine role? Like you have one guy, one slot, got to put him in opening night. Who's it going to be?
I think for me, I think it's Hellenius like pretty. I think it's got a pretty clear advantage over Roseanne at this point too. Just because he just plays a complete game. He plays like a dog. He's got like a pretty solid frame too for like a player his age. Like 5'10", 190. Like that's like a solid frame for like a young NHL player to not get pushed around. And he plays
Hey,
so aggressive too,
he might
where
be
it's like,
undersized height wise,
yeah,
but if you're stocky enough, it's usually not that big of a deal.
no, yeah, that's kind of the thing too. Yeah, with guys like him, because I
Stocky.
hear I hear him as like a smaller forward. Kevin Adams keeps drafting. Like I consider Roseanne, who's a little bit taller, and I think he put on weight this offseason, but I still don't think he clears 180. Like I consider that a small player. I wouldn't consider, like you brought up, like a 5'10", 190 player who's stocky to be a small player, because that's like people don't think Sidney Crosby is a small player. The guy's legs are like the
Yeah.
size of tree trunks. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter if he's like not 6'3". If you're built like that, you could play in the NHL right now. And I think Hellenius is kind of like that, where he's got a solid frame, plays aggressive, and the hockey IQ is all there too. Like maybe he's not tearing up the score sheet throughout the AHL season last year, like you'd want for a guy that's going to be in the NHL the following season, but he was still an 18-year-old and produced at a pretty good clip. And I brought this up last episode too, with like in terms of balancing like development versus winning now. Like I'd be pretty heavy handed towards winning now this season, because I don't really know what this offseason will look like if this team misses the playoffs once again.
Yeah, I'm definitely terrified of that. And also saying Hellenius is stocky. Hopefully people don't take that as like we think he's like a buff, like 5'10", 190 or something like that. But we're saying like he's not like a Roseanne. Will likely, using his weight, be able to shield guys off pucks a little bit more and won't be bounced off. Again, still a young player and has plenty of time to grow. I mean, he just doesn't have that grown man strength. There's nothing he can do about that except just stay in the course and aging. So my two players, after a lot of Hellenius talk, number one, Radim Mertka, just because he didn't look super out of place. Probably had a ton of nerves going into his first game. I understand he played in the Prospects Challenge, but it's not the same as suiting up against other NHL players. Looked pretty good. Buried a guy that who was messing with? Oh man, who did he buried a guy on Monday, and who was the one that kind of sparked it? Was it Norris or was it Hellenius or Benson? Just kind of like came by and just kind of dragged a guy's foot or a little bit with his stick, and the guy responds, and Murka immediately is on there, and you're like, okay, cool. Again, we knew the size and the ability to move, and yeah, sure, maybe the shot, leaves something to be desired. Again, very young player, very raw. But the one thing that we talked about last week as well, but I heard a lot was, is this guy kind of like a soft but gigantic player? And come to find out, he really tamped that down because he was a little over aggressive, years before his draft. So to see that kind of come out a little bit again, it's just one game, but I was impressed. Good little impression. Didn't do anything glaringly wrong. Everyone's going to make mistakes in games, but as a defenseman, if you're not noticeable, you're usually doing something right. So, I was happy to see him play well there. Then, yeah, I mean, you kind of took my Darlene one just because I was going to say he buried that guy that buried McLeod earlier in the shift, and then it resulted in a goal. So I'm a little messed up with my second player, and that entire time you thought, hey, maybe he'll come up with another one. Nope. All I got is Murtka at this point. So I'll say Darlene, obviously. Just happy to see that, he's healthy to start the training camp instead of getting hurt like 20 seconds into it. It's good to see Tage looking healthy as well. Owen Power, it's good to see him looking healthy as well. That was a concern that I had over the summer. And Zach Benson, good to see in number 6. Beautiful pass to Tage. So
It's still
I know
weird
that
to me. I still can't get used to that.
I don't like it. It's like watching wide receivers wear number like 2, and I'm just like, oh, I can't.
Yeah.
I'm just not used to this. I'm a boomer at this point. I can't handle it. So I know that was more than 2 necessarily, but I mean those guys should impress you. So I really don't want to count them as one of my 2. So there you go. Redeem Murka played pretty well, and also leads us into our next topic. King of segues tonight. No big deal. Redeem Murka. What would you do with him? Well, would you have him play in the NHL this season? Would you have him play in the AHL? Or would you send him back to Seattle to play in the WHL?
I think for me, I think this answer is pretty easy. I think WHL 100%. I do think some like anti-CHL propaganda has kind of leaked through the Sabres fan base, kind of stemming from the Jason Botterill era where he was afraid to draft any guys in the late rounds of that league. Yeah.
Or sign him.
Or sign him too. But it's still, it's still the best development league for any 18-year-old in the world, in my mind. And
WHL, not the OHL. Sorry, not to interrupt, but that's interesting. Like, I'm sure people would be interested to hear that.
Depends on the year. I will give you that the OHL has had some better prospects coming through there as of late. But I think it really depends on the year. And WHL too has gotten, they've got a decent amount of American prospects too that normally wouldn't have played in that league. Now that you can commit to colleges and play college hockey from the WHL. So I think even though they may have lost like someone like Gavin McKenna to college hockey, I think the lower end of the WHL is, stronger than it's ever been. And I do think that's more important for player development than having 1 or 2 top guys in the league. I think if you can make the 3rd or 4th lines, or I mean, some WHL teams don't even play 4 lines, but if you can make the bottom lines on those teams just that much stronger with a bigger, talent pool, I think that makes the league night in and night out a better developmental league. So, I just think WHL, I think that's a spot for him to be. And Seattle has a pretty decent team too. I mean, they have Braden Coots, who's also a 1st-round pick in this summer's draft. They have the other Mate Picard too. He's also on Seattle, same name, but not the former Sabres prospect. And he's not a draft pick, but decent player. So I think he's not going to a situation where he's playing on the worst team in the league there. And I do think that league's very talented. And I've never been a huge fan of putting guys in the AHL right away. I think there are instances where it makes sense. I think it made a lot of sense for Hellenius because he played such a mature game. But I mean, with Radim Murka, we're talking about a guy who kind of got pushed out of the Czechia top league last year. And then, obviously in your draft year, if you're a 1st-round caliber prospect, it doesn't make much sense to play in the Czech U20 league. So he made the move over to the WHL. So I think someone that's so fresh to like the WHL and someone who hasn't really been able to stick in pro hockey last season, I think that's a guy that needs to be in the WHL, kind of given a chance to dominate because he's a bit of a late bloomer as a prospect in terms of like offensive domination, at least at a higher level. So, I'd love to see him just add more elements to his game in the WHL. Like, I mean, we've seen like, even a guy like Thomas Harley on Dallas, like
Yeah.
he's someone who developed in the CHL and not even on a great team. Like, I don't think he could rush these guys. And I think for someone like him, just giving him the chance to be, the guy,
Yeah.
at least on the blue line on that Seattle team, I think that's invaluable. And I think that's, huge for any prospect as they work towards the NHL.
Absolutely. I think one, just confidence wise, it would be the best for him because you're just probably going to perform better in the WHL. Tons of minutes, power play one, PK one. Well, maybe not PK one because they probably don't want him trying to go out there and block shots, but maybe PK two or something like that. Have him play all situations, 27 minutes a night or whatever they want to do. World Juniors, go play,
Yeah.
see what you can do there too. Be a top guy there as well with that kind of international pressure. Hopefully, rolling into that with a lot of confidence for playing with Seattle. So that's where I'm at too. Seems Rochester has some bodies on defense. I don't think he would be playing top minutes in Rochester. I don't think he probably should be playing top minutes in Rochester.
Yeah. I mean, that's the other thing too, is like people are like, oh, Mirka is a much better prospect than Metsa ever was. But like Metsa's not a prospect now. Like that's a grown man that's good at
Yeah,
hockey. Like it's
yeah,
much different to be an 18-year-old playing better than these AHL vets than versus
yeah.
talking like what Mirka will be 5 years down the line. Like it's okay for AHL defenseman to be better than Mirka is right now.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, just he's been playing in the pro game longer, and yeah, so I totally agree with that. So WHL would be the best place for him. Let's get him. Let's hold him on. Hold. Excuse me. Let's hold on to him for as long as possible. Play him in preseason games. See, maybe even play him. I don't know with Dolly and say, "Here's your future." In his last preseason game, here's your future. Now go back to Seattle, do your thing, and that was your lasting impression. Now, if that actually happens, I don't know, but just indulge me for a second and say, yeah, just throw him out there with Darlene and go have some fun. So I'm really looking forward to his development. I wish he played closer. I wish he was on like the Niagara Ice Dogs or something like that. Um,
Flow
but yeah,
hockey subscription though, I actually
that's
just
right.
got that. I think
Yep.
it was like 140, which is a little steep, but you get CHL, AHL, USHL,
For the entire
like
season and
OJHL and
playoffs.
stuff. Yeah, like the entire season. I think the playoffs too, but
Did you say what was
it
the last league you said? Did you say KHL?
the OJHL,
Oh,
like Junior
JHL. Okay.
Sabres.
Junior Sabres. All
Yeah,
right.
so you could get, I mean, for AHL and CHL alone, toss in the USHL, you could watch almost every Sabres prospect there. I mean, toss in ESPN Plus, you get a lot of the college games. Like you
Yeah.
could turn into the next Chris Baker with a Flow Hockey subscription.
You can turn you can't you can turn into someone like Chris Baker. You cannot be another Chris Baker. We love
Yeah, no,
Sabres
one of a
prospects
kind.
around here. One of a kind, a true OG. We love you, Bakes. We also know you're an avid listener, so obviously he's going to hear this. But the oh god, honestly, it's a pretty quick episode. There's not too much to talk about in preseason. We also don't want to drag out an hour and 15-minute long episode. That's kind of daunting for someone to look at, be like, in the preseason, what is there really to talk about that's that important? So
Yeah,
we don't
these
have a
guys
lot
have
of graphics.
problems.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. We're just drumming up drama at that point. We don't have analytics to go over. We don't have a bunch of graphics to go over. Just a quick episode to chat and kind of just review what we saw. First couple games, preview next couple games, and also to start previewing the start of the season, which leads me to my next topic, day one starter. This is assuming Devin Levi's gone back down to Rochester, which I believe he should. Go play a whole plethora of games down there as the number one. Do your thing. And UPL isn't playing. So that leaves Alex Lyon and Alex Georgiev as your two goaltenders for opening night. Walt, who do you start?
I mean, I kind of just, thought of this now. It's like, oh wow, yeah, UPL won't be there for opening night. So
He still could be, but the longer he doesn't practice, I mean, you want him to get to practice first before he even sees
Yeah.
game action. And then what happens if that doesn't last a while or can't get into preseason? Like, what do you do then? Like, I'm kind of concerned about that. But at the same time, they do have two other goalies that they can at least choose from. So that's a positive instead of being like, is Craig Anderson around? Like, what's he doing these days? So that makes me feel better. But, it's a concern that
Yeah,
UPL isn't playing it.
it's not ideal. I guess I'd go with Alex Lyon just because like he had a
Really?
better season last season and he had a
Mm,
better season a few years ago when he shut the Sabres out from the playoffs. I'll never forgive him for
yeah.
that. But uh, I think, and his vibes are so good too. It's crazy how like it kind of reminds me of like Eric Comrie in a way, where he's just an entertaining character to have
Eric
around.
Comrie, I will say it once, I'll say it again. Sounds exactly like Macaulay Culkin.
Yeah, he
Okay.
does.
And this is not the first time I've said this on this show. And we need to, if nothing else happens before this show goes off the air in 2065, and I'm old, I need to talk to Eric Comrie. We need to have him on as a guest so I can let him know
Oh yeah.
that I think one, he's a goofball, and two, you sound like Macaulay Culkin. Sorry to interrupt, but I have
No,
to
yeah.
mention it. I
I
have
mean,
to.
more Eric. I'm always down for Eric Comrie talk. I thought he was one of the most entertaining Sabres ever, and I love like the social media stuff they did with him. And I
Yeah,
think
it's great.
Alex Lyon, I think's the same way. Where he's just such like a funny guy. Like he loves talking on all like the social media stuff. I just don't think he takes his job like overly seriously. Like you have some
No.
guys that like aren't allowed to let in any fun. Like he seems like a guy who like genuinely has fun
Yeah,
playing in the
that's true.
NHL. And I think that's one of the reasons why he's had such a long career in the NHL. So yeah, I think for him, I just think and they're paying him more money too. So
Yeah.
I want to say they're going to go with the guy they paid more money to this offseason. So that's another reason for me.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, just to be contrarian, I wanna say Georgiev because he's kind of, I guess, a little bit more highly touted in a sense. Like, yeah, he's, had a brutal year or 2 and blah, 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 but he was more of the, "Oh, he's a new starter of Colorado," and that still kinda sticks with his name, where Alex Lyon is just kind of like a reliable backup, it seems, at this point. Um, but to be honest, I'll probably go with your answer if I was being, like, objective about it because, 1, they signed him sooner. Like, Georgiev was out there too, but you signed Lyon, and you signed him for more. So it's like, it does make sense
Yeah.
that it would be Alex Lyon, but, I mean, Georgiev played pretty well when he was
No,
in,
yeah,
so
I could see a rotation, like doing like
yeah.
2 games, one guy, 1 game, the other. Like I know people like hate that, but it doesn't really seem to be like a rhyme or reason with Sabres goalie success and like how often they're playing. Like it seems like to be random all the
Yeah.
time. Like
At the same time, like, I've been of the mindset, and we'll go to our, I guess, our last question, so if there's anything else about goalies you really wanted to say, speak now or forever hold your peace. But the thing with goaltenders is it just takes one hot goalie, and frankly,
yeah,
the Sabres would have made the playoffs at this point if they just had a goalie that stood on their
like
head.
James
So
Reimer got hot. Like that's like
yeah,
insane. That's James
yeah,
Reimer. That guy was playing playoff games for the Leafs like when I was like in elementary school, it felt like.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So yeah, man. Oh man, yeah, probably middle school. Yeah, I was still, eating. What do they call? What are those little muffin things you used to have? Little bites or whatever.
Oh, little
Used to
bites.
be, yeah, used to be ripping those
Yeah,
on the
those
bus or
are
whatever. Yeah,
legendary.
yeah, yeah. So, yeah, Reimer, it just takes a hot goalie, and so like this leads me to our last topic of the night. If you had to give a percent chance, 0% Sabres won't make the playoffs, 100% lock it in now. Sabres are making the playoffs. Where are you at? Because no matter what we say right now, a hot goalie could shoot that percentage way up. You know, no long losing streaks, nothing more than a couple games, 3 games or something like that. I'm gonna assume that the team doesn't go on a 13-game losing streak. Pray for that. But it's it does kind of ride with the goaltenders, and quite frankly, when they signed Georgiev, I'm pretty sure I said this on the last episode, but I wanna say it now in case I didn't. It was a sign that Lindy's like, "I'm not getting goalied again. I've lost jobs because of this. If this is going to be like my last season as a Sabres head coach, like it's not going to be because of the goaltending if I can help it, kind of thing. So, Walt, between 0 and 100%, what do you have for the Sabres making the playoffs as of right now, which we're recording Wednesday evening around 9 p.m.?
I'd say my unscientific percentage right now would be 30%. I think that's where I have them at in my mind. I think I think it's definitely more likely that they miss it. I also have a hard time imagining like a Buffalo Sabres playoff game, so maybe that's like forcing me to keep it a little bit lower.
Yeah.
But I do see the vision. Like I do see the light at the end of the tunnel for this team to sneak in.
Mhm.
I think especially if like someone like Consta Hellenius has a great start in the AHL and like works his way in a lineup and is an
Yeah.
absolute dog. Like they got enough dogs right now to have like one or two dogs on each line. Like that's a lot of dogs on each line, and I think that's how you get into the playoffs. So
Yeah.
30%, but I see the vision.
I'm with you, but a little bit more optimistic just because I really don't think they're going to go on a 13 game losing streak. And I'm kind of just looking at the analytics of the goaltenders. I'm like, you could do worse technically, but not by
Yeah,
that much. So I'm like, you guys have to do a little bit better. Hopefully, guys stay healthy and everything like that this season, and there's a little bit more depth. So Sam Lafferty isn't taking an ill-timed penalty with 5 minutes to go in the game. I'm going to go 40%. And I would have gone 50-50 because I really am kind of 50-50, but just like historically, like team hasn't made it. So like the proof isn't in the pudding. So I'm just gonna bump it down that 10%. But for you and for me, I mean, like for you, if the Sabres played this same season 10 times, 3 of those times they would make the playoffs. For me, 4. That's still decent odds. Like, and basically, I just don't want anyone to say, like, you didn't give them a chance at all if they make it, because they do absolutely have a chance. But at the same time, I've kind of been one to say, like, they don't have, like, besides Darlene, we'll see what happens with Power and Thompson, that top end talent to really drive them, make me feel really confident that they can make it this season. That's not necessarily there. I do believe the floor is higher, but I don't know if the ceiling is high enough to make me super confident that I would be like, yeah, like 55, 60% chance that they make the playoffs. So that's where I'm at. I know we've gone over kind of season projections, and Jay Fresh said they'll make the playoffs and Vegas was saying nope. So
yeah. I mean that's the thing too of a team in a playoff drought. Like there's literally not one season in a playoff drought where I'd be like, this team has a greater than 50% chance to make it to the playoffs. I think they're gonna have to get that monkey off their back first because you're not going to project a team that didn't make it to the playoffs a year prior to be more likely than not to make it the following year if they hadn't made it like what the previous 13-14 season. So
yeah.
yeah, I think it's just until this team actually makes it, then I can maybe be a little bit more bullish
Yeah.
on this group. But yeah, it's just hard to project a team that hasn't ever made it to, or at least a group of players that hasn't ever made it to be greater than like 40%.
Yeah. And I don't know. I feel like we're trying to be as fair as possible while being real. Man, like the fan of me just wants it to happen so bad.
No,
Like I
yeah,
don't
it's
like regardless of what you think of Kevin Adams, Terry Pagula, Lindy Ruff, some of the players, whatever, like I want them to all have success. And I want it to happen this season because that means it's going to be a great season, not only for all of them, the players, the fans, our podcast, selfishly. Like we don't want this team to fail. And so like we did
yeah.
hopefully that is conveyed, but at the same time, we do try to be realistic instead of just being like, yeah, 90% chance they make it. This is our year. I saw, I saw who was it? Was it Bove maybe was interviewing people outside the
Oh
stadium,
yeah.
and people were like, yeah, I think we can make the playoffs. And then like one of them, I was listening to it kind of when I was like doing something else, but basically these guys were like, yeah, it's our year, and the guy was like, yeah, to make the playoffs. He's like, no, to win the cup, and I'm like, oh no, oh no, we're not that. We're not that.
Yeah.
Like I don't know. You do have some dogs on your team. In today's NHL, it might be a little bit easier. Right? I shouldn't even say today's NHL because the playoffs is more dog oriented. The regular season is a little
Yeah.
bit more like flash and
Well, I
skill, but
mean,
like if
the
they do
issue with
give me
the
the playoffs, I
Dogs
feel better.
today is the Dogs are top line guys today. That's the only problem. Like the Dogs are Barkov, the Dogs are Kachuk. They're not Josh Doan at the
Yeah.
end of the day, but they can be Josh Doan to make it to the playoffs.
I'd love to see Josh Down in a Sabres jersey with that little playoff patch right there. Great.
Yeah.
I really want it to work out really well for him, and yeah, certain other teams like I don't know Utah to not make it. So definitely not holding a grudge with anyone that went there this summer. But yeah, no, I really want it to
That game's
happen.
early on, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like
It's
the
like
first.
yeah.
Let's look at the upcoming games just in general because the Sabres do have some um, preseason games. I was at regular season games coming up, which they do, obviously, but the preseason starts first. They have the Red Wings tomorrow, which this is releasing. So today, technically, for those of you listening. And then the Red Wings come back to Buffalo on Saturday, finishing out the preseason with a home and home against the Penguins next Wednesday and next Friday. Home opener, October 9th. Join us for a live stream. I'm terrible about plugging that at the beginning of the episode. So
I forgot to.
if you've listened this far, obviously we appreciate it. Luckily, this is a shorter episode, so hopefully you made it this far. But we are looking forward not only to the next 4 preseason games and then just to kind of see how the roster gets trimmed down and see who gets sent back to Rochester. Does Anton Wahlberg get sent back to Rochester? But Consta Hellenius is still here. Ooh, Murtka's still here. Levi still, guys like that. It's just fun to talk about. So we'll have stuff to talk about there next week. And then yeah, we're off to the races in the regular season. I am looking for this Utah game. It is November 4th, which is 7 p.m. on November 4th, which is a Tuesday. So I know I'm not necessarily a weeknight Sabres goer, but something's going to get
That
me
might
out of
be one, yeah.
that might be one. And then it's really funny because then they play in Utah on November 12th. So we're done with the
Yeah, getting
German
that over with.
after yeah, we're
Yeah.
done with the German by November 13th. So um yeah, maybe the team won't suck this year like he thinks they will. So um
No,
yeah, I
yeah,
think
I think like just talking about that Tuesday night game, like if this team could just be slightly above 500 like throughout the year, make every single night so much more entertaining. Like it's hard turning up for like a Wednesday night game when they're like 11, 15, and 3 or something, and it's like it matters, but not really. Like it'd be nice to like be dialed in like the entire season, being like, oh, this game matters, or like you fall asleep during one of the 10 o'clock games and you wake up and see your phone and it's like, oh, the Sabres won. That was a huge win over like the Kings. Like it'd just be nice
yeah.
just to have that feeling for an entire season.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think my point to that is for us and Sabres fans and my number one team's Sabres and I love the Bills too, but yes, all season. But my thing is be good enough that whenever the Bills season's over, obviously after the Super Bowl, but whenever the season for the Bills is over, you're good enough that the people that usually don't follow the Sabres until after the season, they're like, "Oh crap. Look at this team go." And they really invest in just oh no, I almost said meaningful games in March, but just having the barn filled more than expected this season because it sounds like season ticket sales aren't doing great, which is to be expected at this point in a drought. But man, that would be so great to not only get off to a hot start, so the game against Utah is filled, or the game against Vegas, or whoever else people want to boo. But
Yeah, I
for
mean,
one,
22, 23, I feel like we got a taste of that. Like,
yeah,
not fully, but like that Levi game, like that crowd was electric. Like a
yeah,
rookie goalie, they were chanting this guy's name. It's warm outside. It's like there's no feeling like it.
I just want to go to a Sabres game in shorts after the
Yeah.
W. Is that fair enough? Without being like, I'm going out in 40-degree weather in shorts. I know some of you will. It's not going to be me. It's got to be like 60s or something. I don't know. But we're looking forward to this season, regardless of what happens. We're going to be here, whether they get 43 points in the standings or 113 and everything in between. Well, usually have the last word. So let's give it to you again.
I'll say, I don't even know. I'm trying to think of something good. Maybe like I'll keep it a
Good.
simple. Go Sabres again. I feel like saying "Go Sabres" at the end of every episode will just
That's fine.
kind of build up that camaraderie and kind of get the guys going and hopefully break this playoff drought.
So your last words, go Sabres. I'm actually going to add one because the schedule just came out. Go Bandits.
Oh yeah,
Go
go
Bandits.
Bandits.
How about a 4P? Let's do it. 4P?
Arena
Yes, 4P.
partners.
Heck
Two things.
yes. That's right. I'll go watch them in shorts maybe when they're in the playoffs. So let's go Bandits. Appreciate everyone listening. We will catch you on the next one.